Hey, I'm Ashley Nicole Davis. I write dark fairy tales for adults. This is for the Dothan, Houston County Library System for the local author showcase. I've been writing since I was probably like 12 or 13 years old. I started with poetry and then moved on to short stories. Usually I only write short stories because I have a very short attention span and I get bored of things so easily and I'm just ready to move on to a new project. So short stories really work for me. I guess I started writing because I was a weird kid, which makes sense because I'm a weird adult. But I didn't really have a lot of social outlets. I didn't have a lot of friends. So I would just sit in my room and I would write these stories of how I kind of wished that life was. I would write about, I've always loved fairy tales, and I would kind of write modern fairy tales. Things that I wish would happen in my own life. Things that I thought it would be cool if they were real. So that's kind of how I got started writing. And it's really good because it helps me work through things in my own mind sometimes. Like if something's really bothering me, a situation with friends or family or just a situation with the world, writing about it helps me to understand it better, and not just from my point of view but from other points of view. And it helps me work through things. I've always said once you get your demons out of you and put them on paper, it's kind of like an exorcism, like just this doesn't belong to me anymore. I'm going to put it on paper and then it's not inside of my head. And then sometimes other people enjoy reading those demons and they're like, yes, I understand. And that's kind of my favorite thing when it's like, oh, you understand, like that's great. So I'm going to read you a short selection from my short story, Blood and Ashes, which is in the Legends of Litha book. On that long ago day, Delphine Winthrop had taken her daughter Clothild into her seance room. It was a special treat because neither of the children were allowed to go into that room. Her eyes had been dazzled by the gauzy red drapes hanging from the ceiling and the thick scent of incense that permeated the air, the beautiful crystals that were carefully placed around the room, and the strange symbols carved above the fireplace. The little girl was in awe of the mysterious room and what secrets it might hold. Before she could properly explore, her mother called her to a seat by the fire. Clothild sat down in the chair. It was made of red velvet in a slightly darker shade than the drapes. The fabric tickled her bare legs. She fidgeted in the chair, trying to decide if she liked the sensation. Mother stopped her with a hand placed gently on her leg. The expression on her face said that this was no time for foolishness. There was serious business to attend to. Delphine handed her daughter a glass of tea. Drink this. It will help you remember, and it will keep you safe. The girl did as she was told, even though the tea tasted terrible. Her throat tried in vain to close against it, but Mother kept urging her on. Once the vile contents of the mug had been swallowed, Clothild began to feel strange. Her face grew hot and itchy. Her whole body felt like it was being pricked with needles. Her hands flew to her face, but it felt strange under her fingers. She lunged from the chair, gasping for breath. She caught her reflection in a nearby mirror. She didn't recognize herself. Don't be alarmed, my doll, said Mother. Just look how beautiful you are. I had to change you for your own good. People were beginning to talk. They don't like things that they can't understand. I had to make you look more like your sisters so there would be no suspicion. Clothild took on a sullen look. She was amazed to see the face in the mirror. She couldn't get herself to think of it as her face just yet. Mother appeared behind her in the mirror. She smiled at the little girl, scarcely more than a baby, with devotion, and led her back to the chair. She would need her full attention for the story she had to tell. She only hoped the girl was old enough now. She really couldn't hold the secret in any longer. She needed someone else to understand and feel her suffering. Darling girl, I know how you feel about your sister. Would you be surprised to know that I felt the same way? Clotilde fumbled, trying out her new mouth for the first time. You hate Alice too? Hate is a strong word, my little love. Let's just say that I don't love her the way that I love you. I merely tolerate her existence. I hope you're old enough to understand and appreciate what I'm going to say to you now. Our family has secrets, baby girl. And once I reveal them to you, you'll understand why you feel the way you do about your older sister. Clotilde smiled at the use of the word we. She adored her mother above all things in the world. The small girl had previously, though not very often and never for long, felt very bad for hating her sister. Those annoying thoughts had been treated with the same disdain that she accorded to anything that oppressed her natural inclinations. She swatted them away like she would any pest, and told herself she would deal with it another time. To date, that time was still yet to come. Delphine took a deep breath, reclined her head, and closed her azure eyes. Her voice when she spoke came from far away. It was as if she was traversing the long years of her life. The sound seemed to come from the very beginning of time itself. I knew from the beginning he was no ordinary man. Just as you, his beautiful daughter, are no ordinary child. I was a young, beautiful wife and new mother. Alice was 3 years old, and everyone agreed that she was a most perfect, sweet, and docile child. It seemed that I had everything. I had money, looks, a perfect daughter, a lovely home, beautiful clothes, expensive jewelry, and a seemingly doting husband who wasn't so bad to look at. I was the envy of every woman in this parish, but I wasn't happy. You would think I would be at least content, but no. The little girl's eyes were as big as $50 and shining brightly at the joy of being important enough to be taken into her mother's confidence. To her, Mother was the most beautiful woman in the whole world. The baby lived and breathed for her sweet words and caresses. The thought that Mother wasn't always happy was a startling revelation. The thought was almost too much for her to stand. Mother should always be happy. I changed after your sister was born. I wasn't myself. A fog had descended over my life. I could feel nothing, enjoy nothing. It was as if my very essence had been given to my baby daughter. I seemed to become invisible, Clotilde. Everyone came to see the baby and comment on how lovely she was. I was nothing more than a damn broodmare. Was this my greatest accomplishment? Was this what I had become? I became jealous of Alice, jealous of my own baby daughter. For what? What had she done that was so noteworthy? All she did was cry, drool, and crap her diapers. Even your father seemed to forget his years of love for me, all his ardent declarations of complete devotion. All of that was consigned to oblivion once your sister was born. He came rushing home on his lunch break or after work, but it wasn't to see me. He came to worship at the shrine of your sister. I was but a ghost haunting these halls. It took Thomas about a year to see how I was suffering, and when he did, he blamed me entirely for the way I felt. He called me unnatural and castigated me to the high heavens. It didn't matter. I couldn't derive any pleasure from the baby's accomplishments. I couldn't look at her with anything but disgust and hate in my heart. All her little signs of affection, all her cloying smiles, did nothing but repulse me. It was becoming clear to everyone that I didn't love your sister. For the briefest moment, the humanity in Clotilde raised its head. She thought of how very harrowing it must be to feel as unwanted as her sister did. She, for that fugitive moment, harbored the first glowing embers of empathy for her sister's heartrending fate. It could just as easily have been she who was born first and unloved. How very sad it must be, she thought, for mother not to love you. Thomas came home from lunch one day and found me gone. May Alice was in her crib, covered in her own filth and wailing, fit to bring the house down. I didn't know why I decided to do that, or even what I was doing. I guess I just had enough. Your father found me wandering down by the river in the woods in my nightgown. He brought me home and berated me something awful. He even called your Granny T to come talk to me. She was even worse than he was. She offered to take May Alice to raise. She said that she could clearly see that I was overburdened by my responsibility to your sister. She meant it as an insult, but my heart leaped at the chance. Your father quickly quelled that notion. He loved your sister beyond all comprehension, even more than he loved me, and he also feared what the neighbors would say behind our backs. I was deemed an unfit mother, and your father quickly hired Lucy Jackson to be your sister's nanny. At last, I was free to live the life I had before that dratted baby had the misfortune of being born. Unencumbered by your sister, it was as if she never existed at all. All this, however, drove a wedge between your father and I. He couldn't get his head around my actions. I ceased to be his beautiful, perfect bride, and I became some unknowable monster. Our loving union was severed forever by your sister's birth. He didn't condescend to cover up his disdain for me. No more sweet kisses or little presents for me. All our interactions became over-careful and perfunctory. That's how I came to meet the man who became your real father. You can imagine how hard it is to speak of him, even after all this time. He was my world, my very soul. You're too young to understand now, but someday you will. The wounds in my heart still ache when I recall our fleeting love affair. With your sister being watched over by her devoted nanny and your father, I was free to be myself again. I cavorted around with all my old friends. I went shopping. I was a woman about town, and I did as I was wont to do. I was even able to put Thomas's lack of tender feelings for me out of mind. I had a new lease on life, and I wasn't about to let anything put a winding sheet over my joy. A woman like me isn't whole without something to love. I tried to fill the hole with pretty clothes, expensive baubles, and friends. I even tried to make romantic overtures to your father, but our love had gone flat. He wouldn't have me, couldn't seem to get over his disgust with me. I need passion like I need air. I needed to feel a love so all-consuming that it's like madness. I started to lose hope that I would ever feel that again. I would like to think your father was there the whole time, watching and waiting for his chance. He came to me in my dreams, your real father did. He was the most beautiful and perfect man I had ever seen. My dreams became so torrid that I woke up in a sweat. I began to spend so much time asleep that even Thomas had to notice and worry about me. My dreams consumed me and nothing else matters. One night I awakened and found your real father on top of me. At first I was afraid and almost screamed because he had a blank mannequin face. When he noticed I had awakened, he changed. He became the man that I had been dreaming about. I kissed his sweet lips and our affair began. We began to meet outside of my dreams. We met in the city for drinks, in expensive hotels, in the woods behind our house. Every day was a new surprise for me. Being with him was an adventure. I quickly got used to it. If he noticed me appreciate another man, he quickly became that man for me. We were flying high and living life to the fullest until I realized that I was pregnant with you. I told him that I loved him and would leave Thomas for him. He said it was too dangerous, that I couldn't go where he went and do as he did. He told me to go back to Thomas and make him believe you were his. I pulled together the tatters of my pride and went crawling back to Thomas, and he hesitantly took me back. It killed me, but I did it. I shared his bed enough times to make him believe you were really his. My faceless lover couldn't stay away for long, though. Your father, my lover without a face, stayed away the duration of my pregnancy. He didn't even haunt my dreams anymore. I was desolate, but I had our memories and our baby growing inside of me for comfort. Thomas was delighted by the changes that took place in me during this pregnancy. He thought the gloom had lifted from me at last. I was excited about your impending birth and became the doting mother everyone had wanted me to be when May Alice was born. One night, I saw your father again. You were a few months old and a thriving baby with a strange china doll's face. My many-faced lover came to me and asked us both to come away with him. He had come into your nursery window and was standing over your crib when I came to check on you. I ran to him and threw my arms around his beautiful body. All my sadness melted away. I was so busy kissing him and declaring my everlasting love that I didn't hear Granny T, my own mother, sneak into the room. Before I knew it, she had plunged her demon blade into his back. His body began to smolder in front of me. He became nothing more than a pile of ashes on your bedroom floor. I heard a screaming sound rising up around me. It took me a while to realize that it was coming from my own throat. I fell to the ground and rolled around in abject misery. The love of my life was gone, murdered right before my eyes and by my very own mother. Having come from a family of demon hunters, I knew from the beginning what your father was. I didn't care. He was different. He actually loved me. I pretended that this was our first meeting, that your father had bewitched me into thinking he was Thomas. I hid my wretchedness deep down inside of me. My only thought was of your safety. I had no doubt that if Granny T found out what you really were, she wouldn't hesitate to end your life. Make no mistake, Clothild. The day will come when Granny T will see you for what you are. She's been trained as a demon hunter since girlhood. Even now, she's tutoring your sister in the ways of her craft. Neither of them are a friend to you. They're your natural enemies. Thank y'all for listening. Bye.